There's a lot more to food than what meets the fork. But sometimes you have to take things with a grain of salt. Coming up, we inspect the passports of our favorite international dishes. French fries. We know they're fried, but are they French? Did the Italians really invent pizza? And did the fortune cookie really originate in China? Are they old wives' tales? Ancient elixirs? Or just clever marketing ploys? Every bite you take has a story. Every morsel a myth. Is it baked with fact or flavored with fiction? Vive la France! They gave us le champagne, le croissant, the excellent éclair. And our favorite side dish carries France's name, the glorious, incomparable French fry. But are French fries really from France? The U.S. loves French fries. The average American eats 30 pounds a year. But travel anywhere else in the world, and you won't find French fries on the menu. Instead, you'll eat chips in England, frites in Belgium, and finger chips in India. Only in America are these celebrated fried potato sticks called French fries. But where did this French connection come from? Historian Justin Jampol is taking us back to the root of the fry, the potato.
The potato originated in South America when the Incas began cultivating them in about 750 BC. But it didn't look like the potatoes that we know today. They were much darker and smaller, and they looked like this.
For the Incas, these small potatoes were anything but small potatoes. They never fried them, but they put them to work in other ways, like using them to tell time, to predict the future, and to heal wounds. The Incas even worshipped potato gods. But all that changed when the Spanish conquistadors hit the scene.
The Spanish conquistadors arrived in Peru in 1524 in search of gold and silver. But they found an even greater treasure, the potato. They called it the edible stone and brought it back to Spain as peasant food and animal feed.
When the tuber arrived in Europe, the Europeans wanted nothing to do with it, regardless of class.
People were suspicious of the shape and taste of the potato. Some thought it was poisonous, others thought it caused leprosy. And since it wasn't mentioned in the Bible, it got a pretty lukewarm reception, to say the least.
In the late 1700s, as Europe busied herself with the Revolutionary Wars, most foods became scarce. But there was one funny-looking vegetable that was available for everyone to eat. You guessed it, the potato. Suddenly, the humble tuber had become the hero, and potatoes saved Europe from famine. But even then, potatoes were boiled or baked. No one fried them into crunchy finger foods. Until, legend has it, the potato found its way into the frying pan with the help of some fishermen. Not in France, but in Belgium. Welcome to the fried potato capital of the world. The average Belgian eats 5 times as many fries as Americans. In fact, it's their official national dish. So they aren't about to give up their claim to fame. Belgian chef Bart van Dalen runs a Belgian restaurant in Washington, D.C. called B2. And according to him, no matter where you are in the world, the fry is not French.
No, sir, it is not French fries. It is Belgian fries and always will be Belgian fries. We take it really serious about this. We invented those things.
According to Bart, and every other Belgian, there has been a huge misunderstanding. They say the fry was actually invented by Belgian fishermen along the Meuse River more than 300 years ago.
Around the 1700s, they were eating small little fish as a little snack.
A fried snack. These fishermen would fry up whatever they caught, but in the winter, the Meuse River froze. A fine kettle of fish. So the fishermen grabbed some potatoes and cut them into the size of their favorite fingerling fish.
And then they fried them up in the pot, and then they were the first Belgian fries.
From fish sticks to potato sticks, the fried potato was born. But if not French fries, what do the Belgians call them?
They are Belgian fries, so I will stand really strong behind it. Belgian fries and only Belgian fries. No French fries, no freedom fries, Belgian fries.
Belgian fries? Yes. In Belgium, they're called Belgian fries. Of course, the French say this fried fish story is, say it with me, a little fishy. But do the French have any proof of ownership? Or is their story not worth its salt? Find out next on Food, Fact or Fiction. Belgium are at war over fries. They can't even agree on how to eat them. The dignified French eat fries with a knife and fork on a plate. Belgians, on the other hand, eat them anytime, anyhow. The Belgians say fishermen fried potatoes more than 300 years ago. But the French have bigger fish to fry.
The Belgians' claim to the fry is definitely a compelling one. But for diplomacy's sake, we should hear the French side of the story, too. And according to them, it all started with a pig. The French say that the French fry was invented by a French foodie and army medical officer named Antoine-Augustin Parmentier when he was taken captive in Prussia during the 7 Years' War in the 1750s.
As a prisoner of war, Parmentier wasn't served the sort of food he was used to.
Parlez-vous soufflé?
He was served pig feed, or potatoes.
He loved it. So when he went home to France in 1772, he campaigned hard to promote the potato as more than just food for pigs.
But French chefs dropped his idea faster than a hot potato. They didn't want hog feed on their lily-white menus. But Parisian street vendors were far less particular.
Legend has it that street hawkers fried up potatoes and sold them from push carts in the streets of Paris around the Pont Neuf Bridge. Their popularity skyrocketed, and soon fries became a staple of the French diet.
So, how did the fry hop the pond? President Thomas Jefferson returned home from a visit to France, where he had tasted these addictive frites. He asked his White House chef to prepare potatoes served in the French manner for a dinner party.
Très bien.
But the fry's French reputation didn't really spread to the States until World War I.
During World War I, American soldiers found fries in Belgium and in France. And since French was the official language of the Belgian army, they thought the fried potatoes were French. So they called them French fries.
If they had known the soldiers were Belgian, we too might be calling French fries Belgian fries. But is it just semantics? Or is there a difference between the two?
I think the biggest difference between Belgian fries and other fries is that Belgian fries are always cooked twice. You have to put them in water for a couple of hours, and then you poach them. And when you poach them, a fry talks to you. It's quite impressive. They will tell you when they're ready. They kind of start to sizzle like... It's actually the steam who's in the potato who tries to get out. And this is what you want to get. You want to have a crispy outside and a steamy mashed potato almost on the inside. And then you crisp them up again, so you really have that beautiful crisp golden fry, and that makes the humongous difference.
In France, fries are cooked just once and eaten as a side dish with meat. But for Belgians, the fry is often the star of the show.
I think that's one of the wrong things with Belgians. We're very modest about those things. Belgians should stand up a little bit taller and say like, yeah, it is ours.
Now, who really invented fries? We'll probably never know. Sorry, Belgians. At least you have waffles. Or do you? Are Belgian waffles really from Belgium? Next on Food, Fact, or Fiction. Ah, the smell of waffles on a Sunday morning, buttered and drenched in syrup with optional lashings of whipped cream and strawberries. This checkerboard cake is a gift from Belgium. But the Belgian waffle doesn't exist in Belgium. It's called the Brussels waffle. When the Belgians introduced their style of waffles to the U.S. in 1962, they were afraid we didn't know Brussels was their capital. So they changed the name to Belgian waffles, to make sure we wouldn't forget where they came from. Perhaps they were just being cautious after losing the fry to France. It's the ideal meal. 3 important food groups in a single savory pie. Such eloquence, such perfection could only have been created in the birthplace of classical art, Italy. But a gastronomical mystery is about to unfold. Is pizza really Italian? I'll bet no one knows more about pizza than this guy. Scott Wiener lives and breathes pizza. He writes about it and leads historical pizza tours through the heart of New York City.
According to my definition, a bagel cut horizontally with tomato sauce and cheese, the pizza bagel, is not a pizza. I love pizza, first of all, because it's delicious. But maybe most importantly is it's a common language. You can't get into a conversation about art or politics or religion with anybody, but pizza, it's a definite.
Pizza may be a universal language, but that doesn't mean we're all in agreement as to its origins. It's a debate that goes back to ancient Persia, now modern-day Iran.
The exact origin of pizza is unclear, but one of the popular stories is that Persian soldiers used to bake flatbreads using the heat of the sun on their shields in between battles. So legend has it, they'd top them with cheap things, stuff they'd have around, like little bits of cheese, dried fruits, like dates. You know, maybe finish it off with just a little bit of herbs.
If the Persians have been making cheese-covered crusts since ancient times, where does this leave Italy's claim to their national dish? Well, according to Scott, this Persian pizza legend is half-baked.
I mean, it actually looks pretty good. I would probably eat this. But first of all, I don't think there's any way that the sun is hot enough to bake a dough on a shield. And even if it was hot enough, people today would never recognize this as pizza because it's missing a crucial element, and that's tomato.
Tomatoes didn't arrive in Europe until the 16th century, so the Persians didn't have any. What's a pizza without a sauce? That's where the Italians come in.
The transition from flatbreads to pizza, the modern pizza, is really weight on top of the dough. And one of the most obvious forms of weight on top of the dough is the tomato.
Great minds were changing the world at the dawn of the Renaissance. In Italy, inspired geniuses flourished in service of their art.
Mamma mia.
No, I don't mean Da Vinci. They were pizza artists in Naples.
The tomato that was brought in the 16th century to southern Italy was thought to have been poisonous because the only people who could afford this new little import were the wealthy people, the aristocrats. And they would eat the tomato with a fork and knife, which were made from pewter and silver. And that pewter and silver would tarnish, making them sick. That's why everybody thinks they're poisonous. Of course, they're not poisonous at all. It's very safe to eat them. And in fact, it's all of Italian cuisine in our American eyes has to do with the tomato.
But the people of Naples eventually figured out that tomatoes were not poisonous, just delicious. Their saucy pizzas became so popular, the Queen of Italy, Margherita of Savoy, even summoned a Neapolitan chef to bake her a pizza pie. He adorned it with Italy's colors, red sauce, white mozzarella, and green basil. She loved it, and we're still eating pizza Margherita today.
Elevate the plate, snag it, drag it, put that last bit of basil. So the first time Neapolitans left Italy was the first time pizza left Italy. And that was the late 1800s when Neapolitan immigrants come to the United States to work in factories. And a lot of those factories were here in Soho.
The first pizzeria in the United States was supposedly right here in downtown New York City, Lombardi's, where a man named Gennaro Lombardi sold his pizza to workers on their lunch breaks. He baked his pies in a coal oven, just as they did back in Italy.
Lombardi's was probably the first to do this, but several others started to pop up. Pizza spread around for three main reasons. It's affordable, it's cheap, and it's delicious.
So, is pizza an Italian creation? Well, the ancient Persians may have baked the first crust with toppings, but the Italians layered it with sauce, and that made all the difference. Today, nothing seems as American as pizza. From the heart of Chicago's deepest dish to the singed edge of New York's crispiest crust, America has made pizza her own. As a nation, we eat about 350 slices a second. Now, that's amore. If pizza is our go-to entree, what's our go-to dessert? Ice cream. But where does ice cream come from? The truth may be frozen in the Far East. Find out the truth behind more food myths at cookingchanneltv.com/fact or fiction. Freezers became cool to own in the 1940s, but we've been eating ice cream for thousands of years. Ice cream was actually invented in China. The Chinese were mixing snow and syrup as early as 4,000 years ago. Legend has it Marco Polo brought the Chinese recipe back home to Italy, and the rest is gelato history. Just when you think you're absolutely stuffed with too much sweet and sour pork, it's hard to resist that complimentary vanilla-flavored wedge that predicts our future. But are fortune cookies really Chinese? Whether you take out or dine in, the fortune cookie is the quintessential Chinese dessert. Honestly, how could you eat Chinese food without it? Jennifer 8 Lee couldn't. This fortune cookie expert even picked her middle name because it promises good fortune.
I was born without a middle name, but Jennifer Lee is like a David Smith of Asian American female names, and 8 was perfect because it's good luck in Chinese and was very distinctive.
Good luck and good fortune are part of the Chinese dining experience. The Chinese even bake a fortune into their most famous dessert. Or do they?
Even though we as Americans associate fortune cookies with Chinese restaurants, they're all but unknown in China.
You heard right. The Chinese fortune cookie is a foreigner in China. You want proof?
Fortune cookie. If you go to China and you give them fortune cookies, Chinese people are really confused. They've never seen them. They'll open them and are surprised that there's a piece of paper inside.
But if these tasty oracles aren't Chinese, then what are they? To find out, Jennifer 8 heads to a famous tea garden in the heart of San Francisco to crack open some history.
We're in the Japanese tea garden at the Golden Gate Park in San Francisco, which is the first place that fortune cookies were made popular. Most people don't know, but they're from Japan. They were originally brought to the United States by Japanese immigrants who came here in the late 1800s.
Japanese fortune cookies? Well, they actually called them fortune tea cakes because they were born out of the Japanese tradition of eating sweets with tea.
The way that you made them in Japanese bakeries is with grills like this called kata. So this is actually one of the original grills that were used to make the original fortune cookies. And if you open it, you can actually see the signature of the baker and gardener, Makoto Hagiwara, one of the first bakers that actually made fortune cookies and served them to the American population.
So how did this Japanese tradition end up as a staple in Chinese restaurants in America?
They moved into Chinese restaurants in part because Chinese restaurants were often run by Japanese people, since Americans didn't want to eat Japanese food back then, which included like sushi and raw fish and all kinds of weird things. So Japanese restaurateurs obviously then started serving desserts because Americans expected desserts. So the Japanese desserts came in to save the day, including the fortune cookie.
It's a culinary forecast we've come to count on for a dash of sweet and a glimpse of our future. Should have seen that coming. Just don't look for him in China. After all, when America's largest fortune cookie maker opened there, they quickly folded shop because the prescient biscuits were considered too American. So what do the Chinese in China eat at the end of their meal? Not wedged cookies, just wedges of orange. A fortune for good health. We've established that the French fry is definitely fried, but only dubiously French. That a sauceless pizza was born on a Persian shield, but transformed by the saucy Italians. And that the fortune cookie is a stranger in China. No meal is complete without a spoonful of fact and a dash of fiction.